let's talk about one of the most baffling missing person cases you'll probably ever hear about. It's a wild story. A young father runs out of gas on this deserted Texas highway. He makes a totally frantic 911 call for help, and then he just vanishes. For almost a decade, all anyone had was this ghost story built around one confusing and really chilling phone call. So let's dive into what happened that night. These were some of the last words anyone ever heard from Brandon Lawson. I mean, just hearing that, it paints a picture of pure terror, right? Absolute desperation. And it kicked off a mystery that would have his family and literally thousands of online sleuths just searching for answers for years. Okay, so to really get what happened, we've got to go back to the beginning of that night. The date is August 8th, 2013, and our story is all about 26-year-old Brandon Lawson. He was an oil field worker, a father of four, living out in San Angelo, Texas. So the whole evening kind of kicked off with some tension. Brandon and his partner, Ladessa, they got into an argument. She was convinced he was on drugs. And, well, it turns out she was right. His brother Kyle later confirmed that Brandon had taken methamphetamines. A little bit later, Brandon calls his dad, says he's going to drive the 3 hours to his house. And by 11:54 p.m., he's on the road in his pickup. Now, this is all super important because it really helps frame his state of mind for what's about to happen. And this is where things just start to spiral. And fast. Just 36 minutes after leaving his house, he calls his brother Kyle, saying he's run out of gas. 20 minutes after that, he's dialing 911. And then less than half an hour later, he tells his brother he's bleeding. By 1:19 a.m., that's just over an hour after his first call for help, his phone goes completely silent. Now, the thing that really makes this case so interesting and what's fueled all the speculation is that 911 call. It's the single most important piece of evidence we have, but you know what? It's also one of the most confusing things you'll ever hear. On that call, Brandon just sounds panicked, totally disoriented. He's telling the dispatcher he's in a field, and then he says he pulled some guys over, which makes no sense at all. He mentions there's one car there, and that someone's chasing him into the woods. The audio itself is pretty hard to understand, but the fear in his voice, yeah, you can't mistake that. And this right here perfectly shows the central problem of the case. In his calls to his brother Kyle, Brandon was claiming 3 guys were chasing him out of town. But Kyle, knowing Brandon had taken meth, he asked him straight up, "Are you hallucinating?" So you're left with this huge question. Was Brandon in actual physical danger from real people, or was he in the middle of a terrifying drug-induced paranoia? So this brings us to the climax of the night. Help is on the way. His brother is on the phone. A deputy is literally at his truck. And yet, this is the exact moment Brandon Lawson disappears into thin air. So let's just picture the scene, right? A sheriff's deputy finds Brandon's truck. It's just parked kind of dangerously on the highway, but Brandon is nowhere to be seen. About 10 minutes later, his brother Kyle shows up with a gas can. And here's the crazy part. He is on the phone with Brandon at that very moment. Kyle's first thought is, okay, he's probably just hiding from the cop because he had an old arrest warrant out. And then Brandon says this. This is the single most haunting line in the entire case. While he's on the phone with his brother Kyle, who's standing right there next to the truck with a police officer, Brandon says, "I can see you. I'm right here." They looked. They scanned the dark, empty landscape all around them. Nothing. There was no one there. Think about that. He could see them, but they couldn't see him. And shortly after that totally chilling exchange, the call dropped. Every single attempt to call him back after 1:19 a.m. went straight to voicemail. And that was it. That was the last time anyone ever had any contact with Brandon Lawson. And so the search began, and the frantic, panicked pace of that one night, it just gave way to years of slow, agonizing waiting and hoping and investigating. This case really grabbed people's attention in a huge way. The Help Find Brandon Lawson Facebook page grew to over 29,000 followers. That's a massive community of people all dedicated to trying to piece together clues and just keep his story alive. This timeline really puts the family's whole ordeal into perspective. From the day he disappeared in August 2013, it would be almost nine agonizing years before any physical evidence was found. And then it was almost a full 12 years before they got a definitive answer. Just imagine that wait. So after all those years of dead ends, the breakthrough finally came. And you know what? It wasn't from the official investigation. It was from a private search party, just organized by people who cared. So in early 2022, a group was out searching the really rough terrain near where Brandon's truck was found, and they made a discovery. They found articles of clothing that were pretty quickly identified as likely belonging to him. Well, that discovery was enough to get the Texas Rangers to conduct a much more thorough search of that specific area. And that's when they found what everyone had been fearing for so long: human remains. And finally, on Christmas Day 2024, of all days, the family announced what they'd long suspected. The DNA test confirmed the remains were Brandon's, so the search for where he was had finally ended. But a huge mystery is still hanging out there. The official cause of his death, it's still undetermined. So we know where Brandon Lawson's journey ended. It was just a short distance from his truck, out in that rugged Texas terrain. But we may never know exactly what happened in those final terrifying moments. Was he running from a real threat, or was he running from a phantom in his own mind? And that is the question that remains completely unanswered.